Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we explore some women in leadership topics over the next 4 weeks. So who's on today? So my name's Orla Power, and I design and deliver our Elevating Women in Leadership programs. I'm also joined by Mary Gregory, one of our Women in Leadership facilitators, who's going to be sharing her insights. Plus, each week I'm going to have a different guest speaker, and today we're joined by Nick Walkley, who is a real champion of female talent here at LHH. And I'm going to be asking him to share a few thoughts towards the end of the session today, as he's recently promoted several women into senior positions in his team. So we'll hear a bit from him at the end of the session. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about these taster sessions. So originally, we intended to give a flavour of how we develop our programmes for those organisations thinking about introducing women in leadership programmes into their organisations. But it's quickly become clear that there are a lot of people joining today who would like this development for themselves. So we really want to share as much as we can and meet both of those needs. So an overview of our programmes, but also some development for you to take away. So we're going to be offering some additional support. So for those of you wanting some development for yourselves, we're going to be sending you a worksheet. So I've designed that worksheet for you to reflect on some of the things that Mary and I will be talking on after that session. We're also going to be offering 1 month's free access to Develop Me for anyone that wants it. So some of the career tools that Mary and I will be talking about are on our Develop Me portal, and there's lots more. So we're going to give access to anyone that wants it. And then also myself and the team, we've also freed up some time. So we'd love to offer some one-to-one coaching sessions for those who would really like some additional support. So do drop us a line on ewil@lhh.com if you want any of those. So we can give everyone access to Develop Me. If we're inundated for the coaching sessions, we might have to limit those, but we will try our best. So we really want to support all those women that are coming for their development. But there's also a couple of things you can do yourself. So I'm going to recommend that you find a buddy. So if you're joining these sessions, think about finding someone else that you can talk about what comes up for you in these sessions. And we do that on our programme. So at the start of our programmes, we get everyone to buddy up, and they keep that buddy throughout the programme so that they can support them and hold each other to account. And even better would be if you could get a group of women together and set up your own group and start talking about these things in that group. So we know from running these programs that women benefit hugely from learning together in these support groups. So there's something really unique that's created by women for women in their cohorts. So really recommend you getting a group of like-minded women together to discuss some of these talks. And lastly, we're in a webinar format. Thank you all for joining. We've had a huge take up. That really says that there's a lot of appetite for this topic. So we've had to go for a webinar format, which is slightly different to our normal learning platforms. So we're not able to do breakout groups and whiteboard, but we are going to be using polls and chat. So do get ready, and I'll be asking you, and Mary will be asking you to get involved as we go through. As Graham mentioned, drop any questions into the Q&A. So I've got Harry, the producer, who's monitoring the Q&A, and we're going to cover those at the end. And if we can't answer them all, we'll write them up. So we will get answers to you either after this session or on following sessions. Okay, so that's a bit about the taster sessions. So just a quick bit of background before we dive into the sessions themselves. We really believe that these development programs for women are a really important lever in inclusivity. So they really help create that level playing field, but they need to be supported by also a more inclusive culture, and also having those positive practices in place that support women advancing. So recruitment and flexible working. And if you have all of these three together, there's a greater likelihood of success. And from our analysis of these development programs, they have an impact in 3 areas. So obviously promotion. So we interviewed women that had attended development programs and an equal number that hadn't. And it's clear that it accelerates people's career progression. It's also retention rates are higher amongst groups that have had this kind of development. And the number of lateral moves increases. I'm going to come back to this a bit more at the end of the session, but this is also an important factor. And as part of our research, sort of first of all, I would say we passionately believe that sort of men and women should attend general leadership development programs. So those are mixed and everyone gets those foundational leadership skills. But these women's development programs should be in addition to this and be focused on those really specific areas that are most relevant for women. So what are they? Well, we did a bit of research and we identified the behaviours of women who excel and refined those. So those women that have been successful in accelerating their careers. And we've also identified some of those headwinds that slow that progression down. So from that, we were able to identify these key specific areas for development. And as you go through these taster sessions, you'll see that we're ticking off each of these areas and ensuring that we've had some conversations and development around each of these areas. So I recognise there's lots of words on the screen here. It is in our research report. And again, you'll have access to that at the end of this session if you want to read a bit more about those. So let me just tell you about our programme and get a bit of an orientation as to where we're starting. So our programmes start with some form of launch. So at its simplest, it could be invitation and information about the programme, a bit like you've had for these taster sessions today. It could be a recorded welcome from the facilitators or the organisation, or it could be a one-to-one coaching session. Or if it's a bigger event and you're launching lots of cohorts, it could be speakers and initial networking sessions. But at its heart, if you're launching a women's development programme, it's about why your organisation is offering the programme and demonstrating that senior sponsorship of it. So we recommend that participants' line managers are briefed and onboarded. So again, all of you joining for your development, have those conversations with your managers. I'll come back to this at the end of the session today when we hear from Nick. So prior to each workshop, people will get about 30 minutes of pre-work, then the workshop. We've been delivering those virtually, obviously, this year. Each workshop is followed by a discovery session, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that at our next taster session, so in the development journey. But this is where our workshops are normally about 20 people, and we split into a smaller group of 10 people, 2 groups of 10, where you can really share your successes, what you've implemented since the workshop, and some of those more personal challenges, and the rest of the group can support and coach as a peer group. And these are really powerful, and these very often can extend onwards after the programme. So this is where I said I encourage you to get a group together yourselves. So we also sometimes combine an assessment tool. Again, I'll talk more about this at the next taster sessions. And we have each of these workshops represented by each of the taster sessions. So if this is for first line or middle managers, normally our programme finishes here after these first 3 workshops. But if it's more senior managers, then we, senior in that middle group or higher, then we add in an additional workshop adding strategic value. So that's going to be the 4th taster session that we're going to be doing. So here we are starting today. So just wanted to orientate you as to where you're starting. So we're looking at the career development today. So let's get going. Let's start working through what will be covered on our career planning workshop with you. So this workshop is really aimed at helping you explore how your career could develop over the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm just going to ask you to pause for a moment and think about this. So if you really could have it all, what is your vision for your ideal career progression? Okay, so if you could have it all, what is your vision for your ideal career progression? So the aim of this workshop is to start your thinking about that and help you put that vision together, starting with this workshop and progressing over the whole programme itself. So the first part of our workshop, just like any others that you've been on, is creating that psychological safety, how to work together virtually as a cohort, getting to know each other. And we've got a number of ways that we do that. So we might ask people to bring something that's important to them, share an inspiring quote or a piece of advice. It's all about building connections and safety. And we'd love to hear from all of you that have joined today and wish that you could be networking and talking to each other. But let's hear a little bit from each other. So the icebreaker that I've chosen today for this webinar is, if you want to, just post in the chat what you remember you wanted to be when you grew up. So just have a little think for a moment. What was it you wanted to be when you grow up? I'm going to share mine. So mine was a belly dancer. I'm going to say that really carefully. So I wanted a jewel in my tummy button. And I can see some coming. A vet, nice. Police dog handler, lovely. So yeah, mine was a belly dancer, although my mum thought I said ballet dancer. So I was sent off to ballet lessons, but I suppose there's still time. I can still take up belly dancing now. Oh, lots of vets. I'm seeing lots of vets coming up. Waitress, astronaut. Yeah, that's a popular one, isn't it? So whatever we thought at the start, you know, in those very early years, we rarely end up, so I haven't ended up being a belly dancer. We rarely end up in the job or career we envisaged. So in fact, careers these days, as you'll all know, they're rarely linear like this. There's a wide range of options. And who's to say that our actual destination is B? That often changes. We don't even know what our destination is. So why career planning as a topic in the Women's Development Programme? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the factors for women who were successful in progressing their career is a clear shared career plan. And a potential headwind is that women tend to think short term about their next job or opportunity, rather than long term about their career and what each opportunity is building towards. So start to think about that yourself. One of the things that we ask participants to do later is reflect on their careers and identify those career transitions and whether this is true for them. Were they choosing things that were building towards a long-term vision, or were they opportunistic and just taking what sort of came in front of them, or only thinking about their next move? So the first part of this workshop is thinking about how we can be more proactive. So I'm going to pass on to Mary. So you've heard from me, I'll join in as well, but I want to invite Mary to join us to share a bit more about how we can be proactive and start the first part of these activities. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you very much, Orla, and good morning, everybody. Lovely to meet you all virtually here this morning. So one of the key elements of what we cover in career planning is what we call career activism. And this is really about putting ourselves into the driving seat of our career. Now, if you're like me, you may well have spent a lot of time in your career just kind of meandering through it. I mean, I've really enjoyed every element of my career, but certainly in the early part of it, I didn't really think actively about where do I want to get to or what sort of job really inspires me. I just enjoyed the roles I took on and enjoyed the responsibility I had with them. And I would say I probably actively hid my light under a bush as well. I had this thing that, you know, if I work hard and do a really good job, people will notice that I'm doing that. But actually what I realized, particularly as I got into my 40s, was that that wasn't going to cut it, that actually it needed more than that. I needed to think more strategically around my career and be more proactive with it. And that's when I started to become more proactive and start thinking about these different elements which really support our career activism and becoming more proactive. So let's kick off and just look at the first one of these, which is all about networking. Now, when we mention the word networking on our programs, quite often the women that attend kind of look a bit dismal about it. They kind of feel like, you know, do they really have to network? And I think it's because a lot of the way networking is set up in organizations doesn't necessarily work for women. So what we do is, in the first part of the focus on networking, we get women into smaller groups, into pairs, and we get them to think about their working role and the skills that they have, and to find one thing in common that they have with that other person. And by doing that, they start to recognize that networking is all about connection, and building those connections and building those relationships. Now, women are very relationship focused. So once they start to realize that that's actually what's at the heart of networking, they start to explore what are some of the things that could really work for them in terms of network, but also what are some of the challenges they might face as well. So we move on to look at what are some of the things that come through that conversation. Some of the things that women recognize themselves is that they're under-sponsored, they're under-mentored. They haven't thought about whether they need a mentor or even know who they could reach out to in terms of mentoring. For men, that is often much more natural within the organization and the way the organization has been set up than it is for women. And there are a lot more role models around for men that men can reach out to, but not so much for women. That women tend to prefer to network with other women. There's that real sense of building a strong connection with other women, and to build that more on a one-to-one basis, not necessarily always in those big networking events where it's the warm white wine and the stale prawn cocktail sandwiches. Women aren't so engaged in those sorts of activities. They prefer to have a much more personal approach. So meeting people for lunch, meeting people for coffee is something that works for them in terms of their networking. And we support them to start looking at ways that they can choose that work for them. Also, in terms of networks, women tend to consider their networks as being themselves, their own level, but also down below in the organization. So they're looking downwards rather than considering how they can look upwards, outwards, and onto different types of stakeholders. Whereas men, again, another difference we've noticed is men will think about who can they connect with within their organization that's more senior. And in fact, in some organizations, you ain't going to get ahead unless you have relationships with the more senior leaders. And that's something women have really got to start thinking about in terms of opening up their eyes to the possibilities of their network within the organization. And then finally, the other thing that comes through is that they avoid making business and career asks in their network. They are shy about doing that. They feel uncomfortable, or often very good at giving. So if someone asks them something, they'll be very happy to give, but on the other hand, not so comfortable with making requests. And what we encourage women to get in the programs and to practice in the programs is to make those requests of each other, is to share what they can offer, but also to know what they're looking for from other people in the program that they're actually on. So we start to build those networks and relationships there. And so we encourage women to find ways that will make networking work for them, to build those smaller networks if they need them, and also to consider how they can primarily use those networks to help them both personally and with their job roles as well. And one thing we do get them to do, building on that, is to start thinking more strategically about their networks. So, you know, if you think about your inner circle, there's you and the job you're doing, there's the people that you're going to see straight away within work. But then beyond that, there are all sorts of people that are in your network, in your outer circle. And those are the people that we invite women in our programs to start thinking about. Who can they connect with, and who can they connect with on a strategic level, from the point of view of, you know, who is going to support them in understanding the political landscape of how you get things done around here, who can help them increase their visibility, who will be willing to advocate for them if they're uncomfortable with advocating for themselves, which many women are. Who do they know in their network who'd be really willing to say positive things about them around the business to start increasing their profile? And then who can spot opportunities for them as well, so that they know what's out there and they know when they can start asking and progressing into those opportunities. So really thinking about their sphere of influence and how they can expand that on a strategic level. So moving in, thinking about, the political landscape and how, you can get other people to help you with that, it really is about considering, what is your political awareness in the organization. Now, I hold my hands up because I've been through my career and there have been times when I've actively not chosen to be political. I've thought, no, I'm not going to play that game. And many women feel the same because they feel it's inauthentic to be political. But what we do in the program is we start to raise awareness around actually politics and is a currency for how you get things done around the organization. And if you don't engage in it, if you don't learn about how you get things done using that political currency, then you're putting your career and your advancement at risk. So what we introduce people to, what we introduce the women to on our programs, is to start understanding the currency of their organization. So know what and how things get done within their organization. Consider the people that they need to make strategic alliances with that could help them, that are influential over not just their job role, but over their career. To actually appreciate what are the things they should be choosing to make a song and dance about, and what are the things that they can let go of. So choosing their battles wisely. And also how to maintain their credibility and authenticity by being collaborative, by engendering confidence, by working with others. If you want other people to advocate for you, then who can you advocate for as well? And also building your reputation so that you become someone who's trustworthy and understands in a savvy way how to navigate the organization that you're in, but also be someone who acts with integrity and with that authenticity as well. So by helping women understand that, it kind of takes the emotional attachment out of being politically savvy. It makes it more strategic for women in terms of how they would approach that in terms of their advancement within the organization. And before they come on the program, we invite women to get involved in a pre-questionnaire where they complete the answers of how comfortable they are with being politically savvy. And we thought, just for a bit of fun today, we could ask you one of those questions that they get asked, which is, to what degree do you avoid being political in your organization? To what degree do you actually deliberately go out there, look for opportunities and build relationships with people that you know are influential? Or you might be somewhere in the middle. So we'd like to just see on the chat, are you an A, a B, or a C? So just pop into the chat. How many A, Bs and Cs have we got? We'll just have a quick look. So we've got lots of people sort of in the middle. So not completely avoiding it, but not fully engaged either. We've got quite a few C's there as well, and 1 or 2 A's as well. But I'd say the majority there are B, actually, so in that middle ground. So I'd invite you to think about, after today, is what do you need to learn about the currency of politics within your organization? Where can you engage with people more strategically around that? Where can you increase your influence from understanding the politics and how you get things done? We move on to looking at the role of your manager. So often people forget how important their manager's success is. Their manager is there to support them. They've got their back. But also by thinking about your manager and getting to know your manager, you can really appreciate what helps them to be successful. And if you can support your manager to be successful, you will automatically be more successful yourself. So what we'd like you to think about, we're not going to ask you to answer this today, but one thing we do ask people on the program is think of 5 things that your manager really likes and 5 things your manager dislikes. And if you're not able to answer that immediately, then that might indicate that you need to do a bit more relationship building and understanding of where your manager is coming from. But we invite you to look at that today and to take that away with you for something that you can think about in terms of getting to know your manager better. But the more you can understand from where your manager is coming from, the more likely you are to be able to contribute to their success, and they can contribute to your success too. So a very important element of career activism is your relationship with your manager. The other element of that is all about expectations as well. So your manager will have expectations of you. So will the different stakeholders that you're working with within the organization. And we talk about expectations being really, really important to get clarity over. Because for me, the definition of an upset is an unmet expectation. And we want to try and avoid upsets. We want to try and be proactive and be really out there, making sure that we fulfill people's expectations, but also that we get our expectations fulfilled as well. So we need to do away with the whole thing around assumptions. So when we talk about the different levels of expectations, what we do is we get women into groups and we get them to start thinking about their expectations from a universal perspective, which is the general expectation of, I need to show up on time, I need to treat people with respect, to role expectations, which are targets, accountabilities for your particular role, to then niche expectations, which might be something specific to you. So for example, you know, I've got a lot of coaching experience. So on my team, if there's a new member on the team, then I'll be invited to support that new member by coaching, because they know that that's something niche to me that I can offer as a niche expectation. And what we do in the program is invite people to consider, what are their niche expectations? What do they want to offer as a niche expectation, but what do people have of them as a niche expectation? And what expectation do they have of others as well? Just to help create that clarity. And we also talk about what we call the psychological contract, which is like the unspoken contract. And the more you can surface and make the implicit things explicit, the more likely you are to meet people's expectations and also to stop there being any upsets or disruptions. So a very important element to your career. So moving on, then, you know, we also invite people, as part of thinking about their career activism, is their profile. And when we think about profile, we link it very much to your reputation. It's about what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I would invite you to think about today, you know, when you come away from today, is think about, what is it you'd like people to be saying about you on the room when you're not in the room, and what might they be saying, and where might there be a gap in terms of how you might need to show up and how you might keep building your profile and your reputation with others around that. And what we'd like to do, and we invite women in our programs to do this as well, is to share one thing that you're really good at. And what we'd like to hear is, particularly in the last week, share something in the chat now that you're really proud of, that you've achieved in the last week. Let's just have a quick look at some of the things that come up. So what sort of things have people experienced this week that they're really, really proud of? This is something that we invite the women in our programs to do. We've had someone doing mediation, balancing tasks, open communication, some great things coming through here. Positive feedback from the CEO, brilliant, lovely to hear that. Bringing people together, building collaborations, building trust, some great things here coming through. So we really invite you, when you're on our programs, to keep sharing what are the things that you're good at, that you're proud of, and that you share that with other people, and you start to learn to self-advocate, which leads us to our next slide, which is really about promoting yourself. So you've started promoting yourself today in this session by sharing some of the things you're good at. We also invite the women on our programs to think about how they can start promoting themselves better. And often as women, we might find it embarrassing. We might find that, oh, we're not really being authentic about this. But actually, if you don't be your best friend and promote yourself, you're at risk at staying hidden. And something that men are really good at is actually sharing what they have achieved. As women, we often say, we've achieved it, like I've helped the team do this, and we don't own our successes. But there's something really important for us as women to start owning our successes and actually sharing the things that we've achieved and that we're really good at. So these are the different elements of the career activism model that we share with you on the program. We obviously go into a lot more depth than I've skimmed over today. This is literally a taster of the different things. But what I'm also curious about is, you know, what is the area, when you look at those 5 different elements, the politics, the profile, your manager, expectations, and networking, what is the area that you feel you have most need in? And I thought we'd run a quick poll here. So Harry is going to just put up a poll for us to invite you to say, which of these areas do you think you need to be more active in terms of your career? So let's have a look. And here are the results. I hope you can all see those. So you can see right at the lead is managing your profile and promoting yourself, followed very closely by developing your more strategic network. And actually the two are quite aligned, because if you keep developing your strategic network, it will become easier to keep building your profile and promoting yourself. So those two are very much interlinked for this group today. So that's something to take away and think about how you can go about doing that more. So I'm now going to move on to, hand back over to Orla, who is going to take us into some other elements of the programme. I would like to say this part of the programme normally takes us about 75 minutes. So we have literally skimmed it. It is quite an in-depth session that we run, but we're now going to move into time to move, and Orla's going to explain about that.
Lovely. Thanks, Mary. Perfect. So yes, as Mary mentioned, that we'd be up to about 75 minutes in the session. So it's really important that we give, as you found, there's lots of activities, but it's important to give people a bit of a break. So we give everyone a 20-minute break plus an energizer to get them thinking. So let's move into the next session. So we're moving on to thinking about what's important to you in your career. What are your motives and values, and what enables you to thrive in your role? And as a starting point, we ask people to complete a career anchors questionnaire and some career values in their pre-work. And both of these are available on Develop Me. So this is where I mentioned about the tools. So if you want access to be able to complete these, do let us know. So the career anchors, if you haven't come across them before, were developed by Edgar Schein, and he researched the underlying themes that underpin career choices. So why do we choose the types of careers that we do and can then thrive in? So differences in career anchors help explain why people with similar backgrounds, similar education and training might make different career choices. So let's think about the different career anchors. So think about, let's take engineers. So typically engineers can be interested in their profession. So they're enjoying the challenge of resolving those complex technical problems. But there are others who might have an engineering background who might see their profession as a step towards senior management, and they're happy to leave those technical problems behind, and they want to lead and manage through others. Maybe others want to set up their own business, or do a spin-off, takes more innovations, run their own profit and loss. So they want to be more entrepreneurial. Some of us are motivated by freedom and flexibility. So this is me, autonomy. That's why I chose consultancy, because it gives me the freedom and autonomy that I crave as a career anchor. And others by security. So this was my dad. My dad did a job he didn't like, but he liked the financial and job security that he got from that role that he did for many, many years. For others, it's about being of service to others or dedication to a cause. They want to feel that their career is helping others. And some of us just thrive on pure challenge. So we need novelty, variety, difficulty. If something's too easy, we get bored and lose interest. So we're always seeking that challenge. Or we might have lifestyle as a career anchor. So we want to choose careers that mean that we can balance all aspects of our life and that there's enough flexibility. So we discuss with participants their career anchors. So relating to maybe the career choices they've made currently. So in their current role, are they getting what they need from it? And also helping them think about making choices in the future. Is that going to be a good choice for me? So let's do that. I'm going to do the same as Mary did. Let's take a quick poll. So Harry, if you can set that up. I know I've just given you a brief outline, but have a bit of a guess. And based on the descriptions that I've given you, have a think about what do you think is likely to be your career anchor? And we'll see what people come up with. Perfect. So normally we get, in our groups, we get a good spread of people with different career anchors. So we're sort of seeing a little bit of that today, although there's one or two that are a bit ahead. So I'm seeing a lot of people liking that pure variety, pure challenge, that variety, stretch and challenge. So as you're thinking about this, again, those of you that are thinking about development for yourselves, are you getting that in your current role? And when you're looking for those future job opportunities, is that job or role going to give you that? Because that's really important to you and is going to enable you to thrive and get that energy and excitement from those roles. Brilliant. So we can close that poll. Lovely. So yeah, it looks like pure challenge is out there. Lifestyle is important, freedom and autonomy, and security also. Perhaps least so entrepreneurial, so not so many interested in that as a career anchor. But there's a good variety there, isn't there, of those different career anchors, and we get people sharing and talking about those in their sessions. So thanks for doing that. So as well as their career anchors, we've also asked people to think about their career values and also complete a career timeline as part of their pre-work. So again, those of you wanting some development, this is something you can do in your own time and reflect on that. It's on your worksheet. And we suggest you find a buddy to talk this through with. So what's important to you in your career? How have you navigated your career so far? And has it worked for you? And what might you need to start to do differently to get what you want from your career? So what we do at this stage is, I mentioned about buddies. So we're going to get people away from the screen. So we've had a lot of activities. We've had some discussion about career anchors. So it's now time for people to buddy up, and we give people about half an hour to walk and talk. So we like people to phone each other and get away from the screens, get out into the garden, walk around the house, get some activity, get a different part of the brain working, and have a conversation with your buddy about what's that got you started to think about in terms of what's possible for you and what's available to you. So this takes us up to lunch. So people can walk and talk with their buddies. Then that will lead into lunch. We give everyone a good hour for lunch. And for those people, you know, one of the key aspects, we're doing this virtually, but one of the key aspects is networking. So we do say that for anyone that wants to bring their lunch and network, so we open up some virtual lunch rooms. You can pop in and join and have your lunch with some of the other participants and just chat informally if you want to. If you want to get away for the full hour and have that time away from the screen, you're also able to do that. Okay, so after lunch, we would have a speaker on each of the sessions. So women like to learn through hearing other stories and experiences. And in the next session, I'm going to have a speaker join us so that she can share what it's like to be a speaker on some of these programs. So we allocate about 45 minutes. So there's 25 minutes of the speaker and then time for Q&A. We give everyone a break again, and then we move into the final session of the day. And it's really time as we come to the end of this workshop to start thinking about what's possible for you. How do you see your career developing over the next 3 to 5 years? And we ask people to think about what sort of options are open to you. So there's the obvious one about vertical, moving up in an organisation, although that's obviously in shorter supply today with some flatter structures. Start thinking about lateral moves, so where you can move across the organisation in order to broaden your experience and get that greater breadth. What about enriching and deepening options? So this is where you expand or change the responsibilities of your current role. So I'm coaching an HR director at the moment, and their marketing and communications person left. So she said, okay, I'm going to take that into my role. And they've combined HR and communications. So not an area that she had been involved with before, but she's taken on that responsibility, learning new skills, and it's really reinvigorated her role because she's very experienced HR director. So it's really enriched her role for her. Exploration, so this comes up a lot for women on the programme. So collecting information to help build the next steps in your career. So you might be doing secondments, you might be shadowing, doing that research, what's out there and available across the organisation. How are my skills transferable? We also have realignment. So sometimes it's an option is to step down or step back before moving forward. I'm also coaching someone at the moment who used to be head of a resourcing team. So they were a recruitment team and they were responsible for profit and loss and ran that team. But they wanted to move more into the learning and development side. So they took a step down and took a role that was about sales and selling learning and development, so they could really understand more about it, with a view to then, you know, moving their career back up because they want to get back to leading that team and having more responsibility. But they realigned to move into a different area. And then lastly, of course, we've got relocations. So where you leave your current organisation because it no longer challenges you maybe, or isn't a good fit with your values or motivations or skills. And could also be retirement or redundancy. So we get people to complete in their pre-work a questionnaire to identify their preference, and we start that discussion going. So breakout groups to review the merits of each and share their examples of what people have done. And some typical things that come up for discussion when we're reviewing that are, you know, some of the things that Mary mentioned earlier, that women often work head down hoping to be noticed, and we can doubt our own potential. So interesting, those lateral moves help build confidence as well as breadth. And one of the things that we notice about women is women tend to get their confidence from depth. So being capital I shaped, I'm going to show that on the video. So being that capital I shaped, but actually in order to move up into more senior roles, we need to be capital T shaped. So getting that breadth, and lateral moves really support and enable that and build that confidence to get ready for moving up, which is why, you know, looking at lateral moves is an important indicator of success of development programs as well. And also we know that research indicates that women can feel that they have to do 100% of a job or an opportunity before applying for it. Whereas men will go for things if they can do 60% of it and they'll learn the rest. So they're perhaps considering double the number of opportunities that we are. So think about, what career move would you make if you could not fail? How could you be braver? How could you have more courage in looking at opportunities and thinking, you know, why not me? What's possible for me right now? So that's the purpose of this, these final sessions. And we really get people to think about, you know, where are you heading in the long term, possibly 5 years. You might not know that you want to be CEO, but you might know that you want to, you know, be running a department or have more responsibility or more influence. And then working backwards, where does that mean you need to be in the midterm, and what do you need to start doing right now to help you progress towards that? And, you know, why not you? And coming back to the question I asked at the beginning, if you really could have it all, what is your vision for your ideal career progression? What would that look like for you? And again, we put people give people the opportunity to have those buddy conversations, to bring all of that thinking together from the day, and stimulate, what does that mean for me? What am I starting to think about that's possible for me? And we bring everyone back, obviously, after they've done their buddy conversations, to have some key shares, set up for the discovery sessions which are coming next, and the pre-work for day 2, and encourage them to really continue those buddy conversations between the sessions. And many of the groups set up a WhatsApp for their cohorts so they can share their successes and keep in touch, and those sort of things about sustainability, because they can continue long after the program's finished. So let me close this session today. It's been lovely talking to you all. I want to just summarise and then have a quick chat with Nick, but just sharing some of the things that, in terms of headwinds, that Mary and I have talked about for career planning. So we've talked about how women tend to think short term about the next job or opportunity rather than long term and what you're building towards. That we're good personal and operational networkers, and we could strengthen our strategic network and be more comfortable about making career asks of others. That we can have a tendency to work head down, so hoping to be noticed and doubt our potential, so we could be more career active. And that, you know, thinking about, you know, do we have to be able to do 100% of a job before applying? You know, what can we learn and what can we develop while we take those opportunities? And lastly, it can feel, as Mary mentioned earlier, it can feel inauthentic for women to promote themselves positively. And women tend to play down their achievements. This is something we're going to come back to particularly in taster session 3. So I mentioned at the start of the session the importance of helping line managers understand female talent, and I just want to check whether Nick's joined us. Nick, are you with us for this bit?
I'm here, Orla. Can you hear and see me?
Yeah, brilliant. So I know that some of the areas we've talked about resonate with your experiences. Could you just share with everyone listening today some of the gender differences you've noticed in recruiting that diverse team and how you've adjusted your approach to create that level playing field, if you like?
Yeah, you know, it was a fascinating learning experience for me, because I think obviously having worked with you and with clients, you know, I kind of aware of things. So I felt like I was already quite, you know, aware and supportive of this. But look, I would say the 3 things I really observed. First of all, around the confidence in competence. You know, I had a lot of questions from, you know, potential applicants who are females around, I don't think I can do all of this job, but I think I can do some of it. I had lots of questions around, you know, I don't think I could do this job now, but I might be able to do it in a few years' time. Conversely, from some male applicants, I had lots of questions about, where would this job get me? What would be the next job after this job? And as I reflected on it, you know, I didn't have that question, particularly from the females that I was talking to. So the first bucket, definitely around confidence and competence. And actually, I felt I needed to encourage and support in some areas, some females to actually apply and to stretch themselves in what they were applying for.
Yeah, and get them to think a bit more deeply about what might be holding them back, asking those really good coaching questions.
Yeah, and I found actually the coaching question was better. If I was saying, so I tried one approach. One approach was, you really should go for this, which was actually unsuccessful. The other question was, why don't you spend the weekend thinking about what would be a good fit for you? And why don't you spend the weekend thinking perhaps this opportunity you're overlooking? And you know, in one scenario, I'm pleased to say we actually promoted somebody after that. So that was great. You know, the second bucket was around how I experienced people articulate their promotions. And actually, our CEO, JC Townend, helped me with this, and often helps me, you know, with this, with becoming more aware of these things. She said to me, "Hey Nick, you know, when you're sending the communications out about the promotions, why are you talking about the males as really strategic and collaborative, and then the women seem to be like really happy and, you know, like collaborating with each other, and, you know, why is there such a difference in how you're explaining it?" Now, actually, I'd asked each of our colleagues to write their own promotion, and actually, when I looked at it again, now, you know, actually JC helped and we improved the communications, but it was really interesting just to see how people explain themselves. And I think, again, definitely saw the differences there. And then the third is around that, just that, again, I think overall around their confidence when speaking in meetings. And I hold myself, you know, responsible. I've been in lots of meetings recently where I've become more aware of it. And, you know, I do think sometimes males dominate in meetings, and you need to be almost positively discriminating to make sure that all voices are heard. You know, look, I think you always need to try and make sure all voices are heard in meetings. Yeah. But particularly, I think perhaps I've become more aware and perhaps more supportive of that. And I think actually both male and female colleagues are very open and enjoy that we have different ideas and different thoughts. And actually, the feedback I had last week was what a difference that team meeting is when we bring all the different thoughts together. So
yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Nick. And I know you've talked about how now having that diverse team, you've noticed, you know, better listening and better decision making as a result of having that diverse team. So thanks, Nick, for sharing that. And just wanted to highlight that, because this is why it's really useful up front to have this opportunity for line managers to have these discussions and to hear what are some of those challenges and how they can be more aware and be more focused and just, you know, adjust what they're doing each day to support women around some of the topics that we've discussed today. So really important part of a programme is thinking about supporting the line managers and people champions of women in the business. So before we move into the final bit, so I'll take some questions, and Mary and I and Nick will take some questions and answers. Let's just remind you about what's coming up next. So at our next taster session, we're looking at strengthening confidence and resilience. So we're looking at how we balance our energy, what life stage we're at, developing our resilience, and also looking at some of those limiting beliefs, why we sometimes doubt ourselves and how to overcome those. I'll also share how we run the discovery sessions after each workshop. So hopefully you can use some of those techniques with any groups that you get together. As I mentioned, we've got a guest speaker. So we've got Sinead Laverty, who's one of our popular guest speakers. So she'll be sharing some insights. And I'll also briefly talk about the strength scope assessment and how that complements the programme. And is that real? We really focus on strengths when we talk about confidence. And today's takeaways, I hope that's given you a flavour of how we deliver our programmes, as well as started your own thinking. So we'll give you access to a worksheet to continue that thinking yourself. As I mentioned, if you'd like access to develop me or one-to-one coaching, then drop us an email on the ewil@lhh.com. And also we'll give you access to the research report that I mentioned at the beginning around those 12 behaviours for women that excel. And finally, just before the question bit, and I'll take off screen, but we're doing some research on 2 related topics. So if anyone's willing to be interviewed by me on your experiences, also contact me on that email site. We're doing some research into the menopause. So we know that menopausal women are the fastest growing demographic, and that surveys are starting to show that 1 in 4 women are considering leaving their job because of it. So I'd love to hear from people's experiences about that. And also, we're also doing a bit of research into dual career partnerships. So how couples are enabling both careers to flourish whilst bringing up children. So if at that life stage of starting a family, how do both partners keep that emphasis on that career? You know, we've got the sharing of maternity and paternity that's come in now. So how is that working? So love to hear from people that are thinking about that and how they've made that work. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to bring in Harry to just pick up on whether we've had any questions that have come in that we can spend these last few minutes just covering.
Thanks, Orla. So we've had some interest, a couple of questions about people keen to make connections with each other and form buddy groups. So how can we sort of support that from LHH?
Yeah, so maybe what I suggest is if you'd like to form a group across this group that have come in, because that's brilliant, isn't it? That you can, create a group across the people that have joined today. Why don't you email in using that email link, and everyone that wants to do it, drop us a line and then we'll connect you. So we'll use that EWIL email address and we'll pop you into groups. How about that? That's off the top of my head of a good way that we can make that work and not breach any GDPR, because you'll be making that as a request yourself. So yeah, we can do that.
Perfect, thank you, Orla. Then a couple of questions which are COVID pandemic related. So of course, these sessions would once have been face-to-face. Is that something that will happen in the future, or will it be virtual? And then secondly, thinking about careers throughout the pandemic, for people who are thinking about career progress and how that might pause in the pandemic, do we cover any of the COVID specifics in this programme?
Okay, so both fantastic questions. So the first thing I would say is that obviously the virtual, COVID drove much more of a focus on virtual delivery, and many of our clients were really worried about the virtual delivery. Will it create that same psychological safety and that same connection? But, Mary, you can contribute, because I know you've been delivering some of these as well. What we found is absolutely that there's still that really deep connection. I was running a session the other week, and that we finished, and it was a bit like, there was like, you sign off first. No, you sign off first. I don't want to go. That connection was there, and people didn't want to end it, and they found ways to continue that. So, and also, some women have said that actually virtual delivery is more inclusive, that actually, they don't want to travel, stay away, but actually by it being delivered virtually, they have been able to access it. So I think both virtual and face-to-face will continue for the foreseeable going forward. I don't know, Mary, what do you think?
No, I would say, so I'd say that the program, they all were originally face-to-face, and they've been translated into the virtual world, as it were, and both have worked really, really well. And I think the way we run this program virtually, we do accommodate, many of the women have been on the programs, they've had children in the background doing their schoolwork, so it's been, we have really supported each other. There's been a very supportive element to those virtual programs as well, that we are in this rather strange circumstances here. And if people want to continue virtually, that is absolutely fine. But I know there's a hunger for people to get back to face as well. So I think having the choice is really good.
And then the point about COVID, I think that has come up on our programs, hasn't it? It's been an additional challenge this year for women. We know that women have taken the more responsibility for things like the childcare or the
well, women tend to carry that. There's a great book actually called The Mental Load. It's not even a read. It's about a set of cartoons that illustrates how women carry the mental load of home much more than men do. So women will be thinking about what they're having, what we have for supper and things, whereas the men in the family don't necessarily think that way. And I know I'm generalizing, but that is just how the general trends are. And similarly, looking after the childcare and everything, that even in the pandemic, women have, because children have been at home, women have had to carry an awful lot more weight than men have in terms of navigating through that pandemic, for sure. That mental load's increased.
And have you noticed any more conversations about, a bit more anxiety about holding on to jobs and, with the furlough and COVID as well? Has that come through in the...
I don't think that's, one of the organisations I've been working with has been going through a massive change at the same time as COVID. So can you believe that? A big restructure. Yeah. And that certainly impacted people. I don't think there's so much worry about their jobs at the moment. That hasn't come through for me as yet. So,
and I would say as well, similarly, that where what the feedback that I've had anecdotally from women who've been on these programs when there's been a big reorganization or other things going on, that they've actually taken strength from it because it's enabled them to be more clear about what I want. So rather than feeling like they're being pulled along by the change or what's going on, these programs help focus you on what's important to you, what you want, and making a more positive choice about your progression and what you want. So yes, I think it's been a benefit for a lot of women who've had these challenges being on the program and being able to use it to talk about those things.
Yes. And certainly the WhatsApp groups that we set up for each program are very active, particularly if a woman is applying for a job. I'm just thinking about one example recently where the support from other women on the program to help her prepare for that job interview was just so impressive, really.
We had one on career anchors. In my experience, career anchors have changed over the years. Is this true for everyone or more for women?
Oh, that's a good question. So have career anchors changed?
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether you're asking whether the actual interpretation of career anchors has changed or whether your own career anchors can change. I would answer from that perspective around your own, owning your own career anchors, is I think you can become more aware of them as you grow and develop. So for example, years ago, I wouldn't have been so conscious of autonomy as I am now. That is a really important career anchor for me, as is of being of service. But I'd actually say being of service has always been present for me, whereas autonomy is, I'm much more aware of it now. But I would say probably even back then it was around, I just wasn't so conscious of it.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one. Maybe it's more we become more aware of our choices and more conscious of our career anchors rather than them actually changing. But yeah, that would be, if we were on a working session, we'd be having that debate and asking the group for their views as well about, is there another career anchor that's missing that isn't in that that circle?
Yes.
Thank you, and Mary. We do have another question on how we unblock some women thinking progressing in career is not for me due to the company's culture of over-delivering.
So that's quite difficult to, I'm getting a picture of what over-delivering might mean. I presume that you're in quite a fast-paced organisation that wants to deliver a lot and it has very hard results focus. I still think there's merit in, you can still look at what have you got control over. If you're in a culture like that, what can you control? What's within your remit? So what relationships can you build more strongly? Where can you offer support to others and start building your profile in that way? It's about focusing on that, what I call zone of control, rather than worrying so much about the bigger picture and the things that you can't necessarily control.
Yeah, and for me it would be about so in terms of unblocking, I would, if that was a situation, I'd love to get a speaker from that organisation of a senior woman who talks about how they've overcome it and shared their story so that you can learn from that. And then also an unblocker, which again we often cover on these programs, is really challenging our perception. So a lot of women, you know, think, oh, I don't want to take a more senior role because it's going to involve lots more work. I'm going to have to work long hours. I'm going to have to do all of these things. Can you make that job work in a different way for you? Can you, you know, once you've got the job, you know, you can design it. How do you make it fit and work for you so that you can achieve everything that you need? So I think some of it is removing our blinkers of what traditional looks like and being braver about, you know, I want that opportunity because I want to have more influence and I want to, you know, contribute more to the organisation. How can I do it in a way that suits me, that might be different from how others do it? So I think it's about being brave about that as well, and changing our mindset. So again, we'll look at that at the next session around how, you know, whether we've got any limiting beliefs around that. Thank you so much for those questions. We're going to meet again in a week's time. I can't wait to hear what we're going to talk about next and the questions that you have. So thanks very much from myself, Mary and Nick, and we'll see you next week.